application. So Ibogaine is not our idea to cut in anyhow the subjective effect. So only if the clinicians think that this is really necessary.
Afterwards, we can further discuss everything. So I'm going to pass the microphone to Claire Wilkins, who's been always very much somebody who has contributed immensely to the Ibogaine community. And also for all this research, it's her work as a provider that also has inspired kind of to explore these lower to mid doses and repeated protocols. So yeah, I'm going to pass the microphone to you.
Thanks. Hello. I just feel so honored to be amongst this group of people here. I feel like a little peanut amongst giants. So thank you for having me with you. And Ben especially for giving me the opportunity, and Pangea the opportunity as a team to offer what we've worked many, many years on developing. And I guess I'll share this story live on the internet, and how my the beginnings of my work with research was. I decided to go to Burning Man when I first acquired the Ibogaine Association from Martin Palenko in 2006 and created Pangea. There was no interest in Ibogaine research at all at that time, and there were very few clinics at the time as well. There, wasn't the big, Tijuana boom and, well, just global boom that there is now. And because of some adverse events that had occurred with Ibogaine that also involved MAPS, there was not much interest in continuing research with Ibogaine, and it was a goal of mine to begin there, to begin with MAPS, and I'd introduced myself to Howard and Patrick and Ben, and the next was Rick Doblin. He was next on my list. I don't know where that bravery came from. So anybody who's in here, and there's a few newcomers, Andrew, who stepped up, and people who just began. I was just just a little baby, just a little hatchling, and the bravery, I think, came from the experience and the medicine showing me that, well, if I could get off methadone, which everybody told me I never would, then, gee, everything else was, gravy. And so I went to Burning Man to go and meet Rick Doblin to promote the idea of Ibogaine research in Tijuana. And I had never done anything like go to Burning Man, or I didn't even know who Alex Gray was at the time, anything like that. And quite conservative, I was a very conservative person, and had just worked in an office for 10 years and been on methadone and da-da-da. And I go to Burning Man and, saw these old men riding bicycles naked, and I couldn't believe my mind at what it was like, that it could be so free and that drugs could be discussed and taken without judgment and with such fun and safety as well. And so anyway, every time I went to go and approach and look for Rick, he was always surrounded by someone. And I was like, oh, it's just not the right time. It's not the right time. And of course, he passed by when I happened to be in a bamboo shower where I was naked, where people could see me, and I wasn't a normally naked kind of person in public. And my friend said, Claire, there's Rick, and we're showering together, two babes in the shower, and he passes by and looks up, and I said, I didn't want her to introduce me, And she said, this is Claire, she just bought the Ibogaine Association from Martine. And he's like, hi, how you doing? And I'm just like, oh my goodness. And he goes, so, what do you think about coming by the sanctuary tonight? And we can talk about research. And he basically, said my dream, right there. And I had to just pay the price of being naked in front of him. It was more my own shame, really. But it was a really incredible experience. And that night, during the burn, I went over and hung out with Rick Doblin, and we talked about the beginnings of research and starting what was the observational trial that has been published now by Kingsley and Ken Alper and MAPS, and most people are aware of that are involved with Ibogaine. And there were several attempts at that study. And for us, it was really exciting to bring people in as clients and have them participate in research actively. They were very excited to do so. John Harrison was the principal investigator. 18 patients went through, and it was a marvelous, very difficult, very challenging, but amazing experience to witness the subjective effects, as Jose Carlos was talking about. And Maria Mangini, who is just an incredible woman and has been mentored by Leo Zeff and Joseph Campbell, and she herself is an incredible mentor to many at CIS, at the Center for Psychedelic Therapies and Research. She told me many years ago when I was beginning, she said, Claire, if you want to work with the system, you need to let it swallow you up so you can blow up inside of it. And that stuck with me, because there was this whole idea of system versus no system, and medical versus non-medical, and Buiti versus doctors, and underground versus clinics, and many verses, many nemesis. And it kind of really, really shocked me after taking Ibogaine and feeling so connected to everything and connected to myself in a way where I'd actually fallen in love with myself and fallen in love with life again. And so in realizing how beautiful it was and knowing how beautiful it was, and everyone else around me confirming that, and manifesting in how my life changed, I was told essentially that in order to not only work with this medicine if I wanted to, that the best way to expand it and to express it was to have it be studied. And what Jose Carlos was talking about in the traditional model of evidence-based science. And in basic science language, we could say to others what we already knew. And so it started with Rick and the MAPS observational study, which started with John Harrison. The beginning of that study, the data was the study terminated for certain reasons. And anyway, so the study started again with Kingsley Brown. And so that's how I was a part of research, was as a clinician working with Pangea and encouraging clients to participate in science and in their rigorous qualitative inquiry, that in their own experience there could be great meaning that could change the planet, and that in their own personal experience and in the expression, somehow, instead of it this ineffable, profound, deep experience, that it could be translated somehow through science and through special minds like Jose Carlos and Ken Alper and Ben, and people who have figured out how to work with this labyrinthian medicine that is ineffable in so many ways. And so at the 2009 conference, when IFIP, the pre-Gita organization, started, Boaz and I asked Howard what he wanted before he died. And it wasn't a cruise, it was clinical trials. And so that was one of the last few things that Howard said to me very seriously, and Boaz and I talked about it just the other day. And when someone is dying and looking at you and says that to you, and you could go and just have a clinic and make some money and help people, assist people, become dependency free, or look at this man's eyes and hear a message and be pierced by it and carry it, and I felt like I was handed a baton that I couldn't give to anybody. I could give to other people as well, but I couldn't just drop it, And so that's why I'm sitting here, and that's why I met with Bosho years ago. What was it, 2008? It was like almost 10 years ago. And I said, let's study Ibogaine. He goes, oh, no, that'll be too hard. They were studying ayahuasca. I said, hey, you know, like, let's give it a try. No, he said, that's too hard. And here we are. Yeah, I came with one of my clients who had just come off methadone, yeah. Yeah, and I remember I want to share something. One of the other reasons why I wanted to talk, you know, with these, you know, very respected academics and psychopharmacologists and physicians and researchers, and I'm not that. I don't profess to be a medic, anything, a researcher in any sense. I am someone who has taken Ibogaine and who sits with people on Ibogaine, and my mind is used how I feel guided with all of us together. And I feel like if this can happen with me, and it can happen with so many other people, that we can contribute in a way from our own individual experiences. So what I was going to say is that when we first had Cisco's protocol, and I went to Mexico, it was accepted by the University of Guadalajara right away. And it was an escalating dose. It's your dose protocol, Cisco, yeah. And I said to Ken, I go, but, you know, I mean, that may not be enough, you know, and they're going to need boosters, and, you know, what about body work? And Ken was like, Claire, this is research. This is not massages and boosters, okay? We need to show efficacy. And he really lasered me. And it was years and years ago, and I was like, oh, and it's pissed me off, you know, as someone who, because I never wanted to be involved with drug policy or research or any of that. I didn't choose that. Like I said, when Howard said that to me, it was just felt like sort of in kind of a mission from God or something, you know, like it's okay. And so in terms of, you know, my work and Pangea's work, we do very, very small scale, individualized work with people so that that treatment can be complete and as complete and thorough as possible. So for research, that's the opposite. Not the opposite, but it's not that. Okay, so when Mura was asking about, you know, is that enough? You know, is that going to be enough? Maybe not, but it's going to show on the OWL score, like in the case study, that it worked. They're going to want, you know, opiates less or alcohol less. And we're looking at safety as well with Rafael's study. We're looking for no adverse issues. And so that's what we're wanting to show. Like, we're just at the beginning, you know. So I just kind of wanted to clear that up, because I get that, you know, oh my God, they're only going to do this much, and that's silly, and, you know, it's not a real, and they're not going to get a flood, and they're not going to have a peak experience. And how do you know that? And we don't know that. There's so many measures, and these minds, and Ken Alper, and Rick Doblin, there's so many people coming together right now. There's a real renaissance and surge of interest in Ibogaine research right now in numerous countries, Romania, Czechoslovakia, I mean, so many countries, Malaysia, and if it's, like you said, so simple to become just a medical prescription in New Zealand, and medicines can become medicines without $10 million worth of drug development in 10 years. No, let's envision that together. I think and it doesn't have to be this USA. Let's do it in the USA, and you know, there's a lot of that, and you know, I personally, in my own opinion, think that it'll be much easier and faster in another country, and you know, the United States has it has a lot against this, and it has a lot for the pharmaceutical country to keep going, and a lot for the pharmaceutical companies to keep going, and a lot for the underground and the mafia in Canada. And you know, there's just a lot for that. And Europe, I don't know, when I'm here, I just feel less mafia around me, and I've been living for 12 years in Mexico, and same in the US. I just feel like there's more sense and common sense here in other countries to work. In the United States, it seems almost like there's something vested in keeping Ibogaine not researched. Because it's there, Ken's there, there's DEA licenses, and there are little studies going on. So allow those little studies to go. But let's, like, we've got this incredible stuff happening right now, and supporting that, I think, is just fabulous. And that's because I'm involved, and but I just think it's amazing that we are realizing something that he said no to 10 years ago. Like, oh, that's too hard. Like, he's doing it. So we can do things that we don't even think we can do. It's really incredible. So, and the last thing I wanted to do was just mention the Reus study, because I don't think that really got mentioned. That the Reus study, the methadone study, he went so fast. Yeah. So I was going to ask you if you could finish talking about how the methadone study and thank you.
Thank you, Claire. So basically, there's a study in Brazil that Rafa talked about, and then the other project which Jose Carlos with Janice also have been pushing very much is in a hospital in Reus, which is about 1 hour south of Barcelona. They have a drug treatment unit which is very recognized in Spain because they have a harm reduction approach. They do things like family therapy, group therapy. It's really, very humane and harm reduction. They're very open-minded people in those teams, and so they got interested over several years in Ibogaine as well. And so the ideas to the case study that Jose Carlos talked about, that will be tested in more individuals. I mean, Bosso presented it shortly, but basically we think that this year, in a few months, the IRB will be able to approve that study. And then basically over the course of the year, maybe beginning of 2020 or so, finish that study, which is also looking at this tapered down methodology. But it's really kind of there. Maybe you can talk about this a bit more. But there was a conference around methadone as well in Spain. There's no heroin epidemic, but there was, and so many of those people are now all on methadone and getting older. So they're kind of opening up to this sense of, should there be alternatives and aids for people to get off of methadone as well? And obviously it's difficult to get off methadone, so if that works, then also for other opiates, it makes a good argument, no? So that's a large study. We have to still do some fundraising for that. We think in about 2 months or so we can get the permits in place. And that's, I think, going to be also an important moment when that comes out. So. All right, shall we open up to questions? Question in the audience? Yeah, there's one here in the back.
Yeah. Oh, I just wanted to clarify. I think my question before maybe wasn't stated very clearly, but I understood the purposes of the study in Afghanistan, but I was just concerned that in those lower dosage ranges, if people were sent home, and if methamphetamine use is an issue, that there could be adverse events within that short time period if they weren't held and watched. Same thing with the overdose risk. So.
Yes, I mean, so the idea is not to just send them home, and the idea is that they have the option afterwards to be treated outside of a clinical trial, with a full treatment. So it's kind of, the study for them is a bit of a taste of the medicine, let's say, within a very controlled setting, and at the same time that gives a lot of, kind of arguments, and evidence about safety, efficacy at those doses. But it kind of goes in a pack where afterwards they have the option to be fully treated. But it's totally clear that they cannot just be sent home without any supervision. Yeah, contain and making sure that if they go back to using opiates, which probably will happen after those doses, that they take way less and that there's carefully done. No? So that's for sure something that's in the protocol and taken into account. Yes. No, it's not just bye-bye, thank you, see you. No.
I guess I want to follow up on Sarah's question, which is the comfort in the process. So they're interned for their 21 days, and So how? So like, is it comfortable? Are there? I mean, I know it's research, like Claire was saying, but like, are there psychedelic pictures on the walls or anything?
Comfortable. Sí, so como es confortable mientras están ahí, como están.
It's a traditional psychiatric unit. There are beds, nurses. It's quite normal and comfortable. Not we do not use like the John Hopkins use huge sofas and music. And no, we are. I think we have talking about real world. We have a real world opportunity to see how it works in a huge normal psychiatric hospital in Brazil that receives thousands of people. Uh, and I don't know how much of you know the reality in Brazil, but from a social, political, and economic point of view, Brazil has a lot of very poor people. So I would not like to see something very fancy and expensive, like applying the reality of John Hopkins, for example, in Brazil, it's not real. People won't have money to pay to a psychedelic therapist with both sexes and eye shades. This works there, but I think, like ayahuasca, I think the future with these substances will be more loose contests, but controlled contests. I mean, not necessarily a 60-year-old lady that has depression does not want to go to the jungle to dance with the shaman. If people want to have deep psychedelic experiences, is another thing. But maybe we can find that like in a normal situation, people can ask help and have the substance allowed in a minimally controlled context, and that's safe. We are not really thinking about comfort in the sense that you were asking me. For example, we always ask our ayahuasca volunteers what they thought about the experiment and how they were treated. It's a very simple room where we do the experiment, and all of them say to us that they were very good treated. So this is what we looking toward, to treat these people well, not necessarily with comfort. If I was clear.
Were you also trying to ask about if they like, get Valium, and because that's what she was asking, I think. Were you asking about medically or just asking? Yeah. They're medically detoxifying them beforehand. Yes. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure she knew that. That's all. And Jamie has a question.
Being an inpatient hospital nurse, 21 days in a hospital is pretty intense, and 21 days working with this, 21 days working with this medicine, even in small doses, and working with, the fact that you just got detoxed and everything, that's even more intensity on top of this. Is there any, special training? I know that bedside manner is a huge, huge thing that can make or break your hospital stay. And is there any specific training and availability that is going to be given to the people that are daily interacting with these patients these 21 days, the nurses, the chaplains, are they going to get a chance to understand kind of the different experience that these people are going to be having in this environment? I don't know how I'm trying to phrase this, but what are you doing to take that into consideration to prepare them to have, because it's a different kind of bedside manner that you need to deal with this with this medicine overall than the kind of bedside manner I would use in just what I do outside of this medicine work. But so I was just wondering if there's any plans to address that aspect of this 21-day treatment.
No, it's not. We have been in this field of psychedelic research for some years now, and we are not a psychedelic group in Brazil. We do not do psychedelic therapy, and our students, psychologists, psychiatrists, they do not have any kind of psychedelic preparation. And even so, we are observing therapeutic effects. So I am a critic in a positive way because nobody ever compared, if you do mindfulness training, if you do cognitive training, if you do shaman training, which one is the best? So, and we do not, how we could prepare those professionals if it's not a formal preparation program for any of those compounds. And you know because you worked with it, but and this makes this more expensive. So we have the opportunity, we not know if it's going to work, but to see how treating this as a different substance, but not necessarily including this setting in the sense that psychedelic researchers sometimes use it. We want to see, for example, in the depression study, none of the psychiatrists has ever taken a psychedelic and never. So and what's very rich to me to learn with these psychiatrists that deal with very difficult psychiatric situations, saying that, oh, how it worked, but how we gave all these drugs that we have here, and you give this plant thing, and it's a very positive feedback to me. That so what I can assure you is that these people will not be in danger from a toxicological point of view. We are very preoccupied. That's why we are going to start with very low doses. But I also, it's a very good opportunity to know what would happen without this context. It's not, maybe it does not work without the context, but nobody did it without the context. So it's an opportunity to see in this specific setting how it works. I'm not saying that it's the best because I really don't know. So we have this opportunity. If we would start to trying to convince the nurses that do formations and tal, I do not think we would do this study in the next 10 years or so. As I said, Brazil has a very difficult economic situation, and all that increases the price of the study. And I in the future, at least in Brazil, I think it should be something that it will be present in the public health system, something more cheaper to be performed. It's not. It does not exclude the possibility that people go to a specific clinic to do more psychological or spiritual, religious use of these drugs. But let's see if low doses in a more traditional psychiatric setting, let's see if it works, because if it works, it could be easier and cheaper. But we are not really damaging these people. I think we are really going to take care of them as we do. The hospital is a reference, not only in South America, but in Latin America, that the personnel there is very good prepared. So our main preoccupation is the safety of these people. And the efficacy is the second, but the safety of them is the first thing that we are thinking.
We were just yesterday talking about this ayahuasca study where they found that there were almost no difference between ayahuasca and placebo in the first 7 days. And what does it happen? Well, one of the reasons is that probably in this study was the first time that a patient with major depression was well treated. Not treated in the medical sense, but in the human sense. When the patient arrived to the hospital, he had very good in a facility that was comfortable and that was treated with humanity. And probably we are seeing the placebo response.
Probably they never treated as this human before. I was talking to Jose Carlos in Natal, where the ayahuasca protocol happened. People are very poor. So people did not want to leave the hospital after the study ended, not because of the treatment, because something was given really attention to them. So this is very important to us.
Just one recommendation: lighting. Lighting. Dim the lights. The patients get very sensitive to lights. The hospital.
Is there any impact of shifting political tectonics in Brazil on the work you're doing? Shifting political.
Was so fun until now, politics. No. Brazil is a very complicated country politically. We have a very corrupt political system, and we are in a very delicate political moment now with the new president. Cannabidiol, for example, when the worst politician has his son with epilepsy and you give this marijuana thing to him and this stops convulsion, that touches people. So I think, and we are in a privileged position in the São Paulo state because the money from the university is from the states, not from the whole country, and we have some autonomy to do that. So I really don't know what will happen from a political point of view, but I think we will have the opportunity to keep doing our studies in the following years without much problem. We are a very respected institution in the country, and the knowledge is important from people from the left or right orientations. And the efficacy for treatment, many of these left or right politicians have people with drug problems in their families. So if we can really show that something works, it, let's say, would touch the hearts of the most stone-hard people. So I am not preoccupied really with that possibility. I think we will survive this political crisis and keep doing research. That's my personal opinion. I do not know what will happen, but I do not think they will threat anyhow the studies that we do.
Is this the last panel? 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 Yeah? Dana, you're going to close? Well, I want to thank you so much for somehow coordinating this to happen. It's my fault.
You agreed. That was when it started happening.
Listen, what I want to tell you one thing though. One little thing. You think that people hate you or have an agenda against you, and if it's true, just listen. One thing. If it's true, you occupy space in people's head. Use it. Use that opportunity wisely.
Well, yeah, I understand. Okay. There was supposed to be another panel, which was east of Bangladesh, right? In other words, we were going to do Afghanistan, and we were going to do Nepal, and then we're going to talk about East Asia, Australia, the situation in the Philippines. What is the one thing in common between death squads in the Philippines and chemsex? Speed. Very good. Methamphetamine. And methamphetamine actually doesn't get enough attention in the Ibogaine literature because there's studies on alcohol and cocaine, and there's studies on heroin, but there are no studies on meth yet. There's a lot of people who've been treated for meth. And, we know that it's about 50% effective. But we don't really know because we've never measured it. And so I'm trying right now to do studies in the Czech Republic and in San Francisco of microdosing so that we can get around the Herg blockade panic they're in and compare the synthetic NIDA ibogaine with the real ibogaine. And hopefully I can somehow recruit the New York Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to kind of keep track of these two things and set up some criteria so some actual comparison is possible. I mean, I could try to do it through Ken, but I think these people over at the health department are actually far less busy than Ken. I went to this meth forum, as I said, just really a few days before I left town. And they were talking about, this is a joke clinical trial at Columbia, where they're giving somebody a big dose of Trexan and a very big dose of Wellbutrin. The problem is there's this New York City program already, right, that the health department has that deals with actual patients called the Recharge Program, which is one of the first harm reduction programs for methamphetamine in the country, where you can actually be in a program, be attended to medically, and not have to give up methamphetamine. Practically every place says you got to quit methamphetamine, and that may not work right away with a lot of people. So this is good. They have access to Wellbutrin. They have access to Trexan. Both of those are standard addiction drugs, right? So they already, in their standard of care, are giving Adderall and Wellbutrin. They could easily give naltrexone. They're just not interested. They're interested in a visit from me and Ken Alper at the end of January. Hopefully, we can have clinical results by 2020. So where do we have the conference in 2020? Tomorrow we're going to have a meeting about the conference next year, which is supposed to be in London. And we're going to discuss it tomorrow. And you're all invited to the meeting in this room tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock about the future of the Ibogaine movement. And you have a vote. And you can participate. A vote in what? Everything that happens. Yeah, everything in the future. You can sit here and it's the executive session. It has as much credibility as this conference, or as little credibility as this conference, but it is the executive session of this conference. And the problem is we don't really know where we're going in 2020. We're going to try to do it at NYU, but it's very expensive. It's not free like it was when Ken did it in 1999. He got that hall for free. They want $60,000. This guy, Langone bought the university, and he raised the price on everything. But the point I'm just going to finish. There is a potential possibility, which has to be checked out, regarding Malaysia. Malaysia just legalized medical marijuana and abolished the death penalty. And in the process, somebody I met when I went to the Philippines, named Johan, met the prime minister. In that country, it is probably necessary to get permission and endorsement of the government to do an Ibogaine conference. But it will give us access to the Philippines, to India, to China, to Australia, places where, Ibogaine really should be more known, but isn't known. So we're going to actually look at that as a potential possibility, because if we had the findings from a methamphetamine study and an 18MC study, we'd have something to present. So that's all I wanted to say. I'll see you tomorrow, guys, 10 o'clock in the morning.
Thank you, everybody. See you at the Hong Kong Palace, I think it's called, 7:30, an hour and 10 minutes. Thank you, everyone.